The air inside the house of black and white tasted of dust and damp stone, a hush so old and thick that a footstep seemed an affront to time itself. Deep in that gloom a figure knelt before the shrouded lord's statue, a clay coin between thumb and forefinger. The coin bore the hollow-eyed face of death, yet the kneeling man, who had worn the names of farmers, soldiers, and shipwrights, saw only opportunity. He listened as the waifish acolyte spoke the words of the contract, an oath sealed in shadow to erase a family that had outlived empires. The price was staggering: casks of jade from Yeti and a treasury's worth of Bravosi silver. But the true reward lay in the riddle whispered with the coin. Every dragon slain before it takes its first breath nips new wars in the bud. The stranger accepted. He rose without trembling. In that moment a kingdom's fate tilted toward silence. Across the narrow sea, Dragonstone clawed at a purple dawn. High tide lashed the blazing black stone as Queen Rhaenys Targaryen labored in a chamber scented with smoke and seawater. Midwives wiped sweat from her brow, whispering prayers to the mother. Behind a tapestry, the stranger slipped unseen, wearing the face of the midwife who should have arrived from Driftmark. No light touched his dagger. Its steel drank the glow of the braziers. When the babe came forth with a squall, a boy, hair pale as moonlit milk, the stranger laid him on a cloth of red silk. His fingers brushed the boy's throat. One quick press, so gentle the skin barely dimpled, and the future shrank to a stillborn hush. A gasp traveled the chamber, yet the stranger's borrowed smile held firm. By dawn's full bloom, blame coiled around a fever the child never truly endured. The queen wept. The king stared at the sea. The first step of the faceless design rested in swaddling no one would ever hold. The deaths did not end there. 3 seasons later, when Princess Visenya bore twin girls within the Red Keep, a Bravosi potseller arrived in King's Landing. He carried ointments to soothe teething gums and dreams of coin enough to buy a ship. In truth, his jars held sweet sleep brewed with Shadowbinder's pitch. 2 doses slipped into barley milk, robbed both infants of breath before their lungs had learned the world. The city septon spoke of curse and sin, yet no one traced the silent potseller as he boarded a cog bound for Old Town, shedding his face like last year's cloak. He left behind no footprints, only grief crouched in gilded cradles. Years marched, banners changed, and coin flowed in secret coffers within Bravo Stato. Other hands joined the oath, a pale girl with a smile of ashes, a sailor who limped from an old Lacine blade, a baker whose fingers never burned no matter how hot the ovens roared. They drifted through tournaments and harvest fairs, always arriving where Targaryen heirs drew first breaths. A silver-haired babe drowned in her birthing tub at Summerhall. A toddler playing in the dragon pit vanished among shadows. Only a ribbon remained, fluttering from a dragon's jaw like a crimson tongue. Septons called for stricter prayers and alchemists burned scented woods to drive out ill spirits, but the pattern coiled tighter than any maester's logic. Generations of stillborn tragedies left the realm uneasy, yet dragons still wheeled over the skies, for the adult riders endured. The faith of kings, however, began to fray. One autumn, King Jaehaerys, gray of beard and heavy of sorrow, stood beside the empty cradle of his 5th lost son. Candlelight bruised the hollows under his eyes. "Is it the gods who hate us?" he murmured to Grand Maester Bennifer. The old scholar shook his head. "The gods do not hate your grace, but men wearing gods' faces might." Jaehaerys ordered secret inquiries in Essos, dispatching gold cloaks disguised as sellswords. Few returned, and those who did came bearing tongues removed, warning carved in Bravosi glyphs across their chests. Some debts are paid with silence. Elsewhere the stranger, now older, shoulders weighed by deeds, wandered the canals of Bravos during the moon festival. Lanterns floated like embers upon water. Children laughed. He felt nothing. The coin in his pocket, always warm as blood, reminded him of his vow. Each time a new Targaryen queen swelled with life, he tasted iron behind his teeth. He wondered if dragons felt a pang before their eggs were cracked for feasts. Then came whispers of Queen Alysanne's pregnancy, a boy prophesied by woods witches to bring peace. The stranger set sail once more, for peace was the one heir he could never allow to draw breath. Winter wrapped King's Landing in white when Alysanne went into labor. Snow framed the towers like lace. The stranger crept through tunnels first carved by Maegor's fearful masons, emerging beneath the royal bedchamber. The queen's cries echoed like torn silk, while a brassy-haired midwife, a face borrowed from a corpse in flea-bottom, stepped forward to take the child. But fate, fickle and sharp, cut the stranger's path. Ser Ryam Redwine, named Lord Commander, that very night, insisted on standing vigil. His seasoned eyes, drunk on wine yet clear as morning steel, lingered on the midwife's unfamiliar hands. "You there?" he barked, but the stranger had already pressed the powder-soaked cloth to the newborn's lips. Ser Ryam's blade flashed. Blood dotted snow-white linens. The assassin fell, iron-scented steam rising from his gut. Yet the babe's chest did not rise. Even victory tasted of ash for Ryam as he knelt by the small body, understanding too late he had been chosen to witness doom, not prevent it. News traveled faster than ravens. Every royal birth fell like wheat. Dragons remained, but without heirs to bond, they grew restless, riderless, and fierce. Shepherds of the Dornish marches spoke of wyverns with malice in molten eyes. At Storm's End, a blue-scaled beast scorched fields in rage, its would-be rider found half-eaten in the stable. The realm began to curse the Targaryen name. Small folk muttered that the dragon's wrath poisoned the very clouds. A red mist stalked river valleys after each hatchling's death. Lords whispered of ending the dynasty to save the world from winged ruin. It was then that Lord Rickon Stark, Wolf of Winterfell, proposed an accord unlike any before. He sailed to the Wall to consult with the ancient commanders of the Night's Watch, for old tales said dragonfire once held back horrors in the north. If the dragons died untethered, what remained to guard the long night? But when word reached him that no new dragonlords would rise, Lord Rickon swore an oath of ice. The North would stand alone. He recalled a conjurer's lore. When the last dragon falls unbound, winter's true teeth gnash the world. His ravens flew south, urging conclaves, yet received only parchment heavy with sigils and light on action. The realm's Southrons argued over tariffs, while dragons screamed without riders above Driftmark, their roars echoing like funeral drums. The stranger's band expanded into a choir of ghosts. They infiltrated septs, tourneys, and even the Citadel, where rumored Targaryen bastards sought master chains. One such boy, a lanky page with the Valyrian caste, vanished from the Rookery Tower before his chain was forged. A lone link of Valyrian steel lay in his empty bed, polished by unseen fingers. Each disappearance fed a myth. The line of the dragon was cursed, and any who bore its blood would choke on their first breath. Faith-militant zealots seized on the story, marching through King's Landing with 7-pointed stars blazing white on scarlet. Radicals blamed the Targaryens for every crop failure, every pox blister, every lost war galley. An exiled Lysene kingpin offered a bounty for hidden heirs, claiming righteous vengeance for the Valyrian freehold's fall. Coin poured like cheap wine into the Faceless coffers. Then, in the year the Citadel recorded as 187 AC, Queen Rhaella learned she was with child. By then, the royal couple lived in guarded seclusion at Summerhall, tower windows bricked and arrow slits sealed. Kingsguard doubled, no outsider set foot within a league. Yet secrets seeped like groundwater. The Faceless brethren waited in silence as royal ravens confirmed the queen's term. The stranger, racked by old wounds and specters, donned one last face, that of a maester whose ship wrecked conveniently near Dorne. His chain clinked as he rode through the Kingswood under escort, carrying salves for swollen ankles and rare herbs to ease birthing pains. None guessed that beneath the chain his throat bore a new scar, carved in the house of black and white, the mark of those who surrender their lives for the final payment. Days later, thunder battered Summerhall. Stormlight flickered across the birthing room as Rhaella screamed. Candles shuddered, throwing monstrous shadows. The maester approached with steady hands, chanting soft Valyrian lullabies, urging the queen to push. When the crown of white gold hair appeared, joy flickered in every eye. The assassin held a twisted smile behind his masks of calm. In his left sleeve lay a shard of dragon glass, black as night. He whispered one last prayer to the many-faced god. Let this be the breath that ends a dynasty. Then he struck. But the shard never reached the child. A hand like iron clamped the assassin's wrist. Old, scarred Sir Dunk, a hedge knight long kept at Summerhall as protector and friend, had seen too many babies die. He wrenched the dragon glass away, drove his pommel into the assassin's jaw, and dragged him to the rushes. Chaos exploded. Midwives shrieked. The queen fainted. In the storm's roar, the child wailed, a cry fierce as wildfire. Sir Dunk lifted the newborn aloft, tears in his eyes. Live, little dragon, he breathed. Live. The assassin spat blood, laughing even as shackles bit his wrists. One gasp does not outpace destiny, he hissed. Sir Dunk silenced him with a mailed fist. Yet outside, the storm abated. The dawn that followed painted Summerhall gold. The child, named Darren, after dreamers of old, latched to his mother's breast, healthy and hungry. For the first time in decades, a Targaryen heir survived a sunrise. Far in Bravos, the waifish acolyte knelt before the shrouded lord, coin clutched so tightly her knuckles blanched. The contract lay unfulfilled. The shrouded lord's carved lips seemed to twist in the candlelight, though he never moved. She felt the weight of 1,000 unpaid debts scraping her spine. Failure had but one price. The doors of the sanctum closed like jaws. Silence swallowed her scream. In Westeros, rumors spread that the curse had broken. Small folk left offerings of pale dragonstones at Septi's steps, praying for mercy. Some lords rejoiced. Others sharpened blades. Lord Rickon Stark received raven news and bowed to snow, whispering thanks to old gods. Yet in the crypt cold halls of kings, doubt lingered. One heir lived, but one alone might not mend the feuds brewing between unbound dragons and fearful men. Already, dragonfire battles scarred the Velikor of the Reach, and Dornish scouts spoke of a crimson beast nesting near Sunspear, its hunger insatiable. Darren grew beneath copperwood arches, guarded by Sir Dunk, taught the lance by Sir Riam's aged hand, nursed on tales of lost siblings he would never meet. Each night, his mother prayed over him with 7 oils, while bards sang softly in the courtyard to drown any whispers of wings outside. Yet Darren dreamed, as dragon lords once did. He saw himself astride a sleek jade drake, raging across northern snows, forging peace where steel had shattered it. He woke convinced that one life could heal centuries. But darkness in Bravos coalesced around his name, a new cadre of assassins forging blades thin as sighs. The narrow years tightened. Kings landed crushed rebellions. Gold cloaks patrolled sewers by torchlight. Still, the faceless contracts persisted, paid now by those who feared not dragons but hope. They believed peace under a single ruler anathema to coin's free flow. In smoky Pentoshi counting houses, men whispered that chaos bred profit. Order strangled it. Kill the boy, their ledgers inked. Let the realm burn on equal terms. So the final dance began. An alchemist's boy delivered a crate of wildfire to Summerhall, claiming it a gift for the king's next name day. Within the crate, coiled among green flasks, hid a girl whose eyes mirrored the stranger's coin. She breathed shallowly, heart timed to the ticking of glass. A storm brewed overhead, nature's drum to mask the coming blast. In the library beyond, Darren traced ancient maps, planning roads to link distant holds. Sir Dunk lingered at the door, a chill creeping down his spine without a whisper of why. The girl eased from the crate, limbs folding like origami shadows. She padded across reed mats, blade glimmering. Each step celebrated decades of knives buried in cribs, poisons poured in milk, knots tied in tiny lungs. She lifted her dagger, but felt nothing beneath her foot. The floor gaped open, a moat of black. She plunged, striking oak beams before crashing into a cavern hidden beneath Summerhall. Braziers flared, crossbows twanged. Men in the king's colors emerged, strings taut. The girl snarled, whirling to climb, but bolts found her spine, pinning her to the earth. Above, Daron appeared at the trapdoor rim, Sir Dunk beside him. "I dreamed of you," the prince said, voice steady despite the tremor in his hand. The dragon pit within the castle, where the traitor fell like rain. His violet eyes were ancient in a boy's face. "Dreams now guard us." The dying girl's gaze burned with questions she would never voice. Sir Dunk descended, kneeling in the torch glow. "Tell us," he urged softly, "who sends you?" Blood bubbled on her lips. She smiled, but it held no warmth, only the calm of a life surrendered long ago. "No one," she whispered, breath fading. "No one sends me. Death walks where it will." Her eyes filmed over. Silence reclaimed her. For 40 more nights, the realm held its breath. Then came the dragon's dawn. High above Summerhall, a dragon whose scales matched the infant prince's dream. Jade shot with gold, hatched from a forgotten egg warmed by wildfire's accidental blast, when the crate sorcery had flared in the cellars. The creature's first shriek split clouds. It circled the castle thrice before alighting on a balcony where the young prince stood. No grown dragon had formed a bond since the heirs began to die. Yet this hatchling lowered its serpentine neck. Daron placed his fingers on warm scales, and every guard knelt, some in terror, some in reverence. The bond sealed not with blood but with breath. The first unbroken chain of man and dragon in a century. In Bravos, the house of Black and White's inner sanctum rang with the clang of iron doors. For the first time, the shrouded lord's statue cracked, a fissure running from brow to breast. Priests traced it, shocked into stillness. The oath had met iron greater than shadow, and something old as Valyria broke awake inside stone. Some said it was the many-faced god's displeasure. Others said it was relief. The tally balanced at last. Whichever truth, the Faceless men disbanded their Targaryen task. Coins once warm turned cold as river pebbles. Masks were burned. Assassins vanished into new lives, leaving only echoes. Yet not all embraced this ending. Lords who had prospered amid chaos plotted anew. Across the seas, Mirish sails outfitted war galleys. In the stepstones, a corsair queen with hair white as pearl claimed Targaryen blood and rallied exiles, intent on seizing a dragon for herself. And in the north, Lord Rickon marched south, banners streaming like ghosts, determined to weigh allied words against deeds. Daron Targaryen, last heir, first hope, studied it all from Summerhall's high tower. Dragons wheeled in the sunset, and he felt their pull. War or peace, destiny or choice, he knew his life's thread trembled between blades sharper than any faceless dagger. He closed his eyes and breathed, recalling the stranger's legacy of silence, the lullaby of killers who believed flames could be smothered at the spark. But embers, once scattered, could ignite forests. He opened his eyes to the dragon waiting on the parapet, and he smiled, understanding that no assassin's whisper could drown the roar of reborn fire. Outside, night carried the scent of storm-soaked earth. Somewhere, steel rang as plots were forged, yet against that echo rose another sound, wings beating against skies laced with stars. For every life the Faceless men had stolen, the realm bore scars, yet from scars new skin formed, tougher than before. And in the hush before dawn Daron mounted his dragon, feeling the world tilt toward possibility. With a single word in High Valyrian, he ushered the beast skyward, carving an arc of green fire across the dark, a promise that some songs, once thought extinguished, could return brighter than any dream. Moonlight bled through Summerhall's shattered skylights, silvering the flagstones where Daron Targaryen had first felt a dragon's heartbeat echo his own. 16 years had passed since that dawn, yet in his dreams, the green-gold wings still unfurled across a bruised horizon, promising that even in a realm fractured by fear, flame could knit the bones of destiny. He woke in the pre-dawn hush with the taste of ash on his tongue. Not the acrid tang of fires long extinguished, but the sweeter smoke of pinewood torches lining a snowbound hall. Northern scents, he realized. The dream had shifted. Somewhere beyond the massive storm shutters, a kraken-black sky grappled the castle's towers. But Daron reached for ink and parchment. In the quiet moments before duty's clamor, he trusted the quill more than any maester. Dreams had guided his life since birth. Ignoring them felt like blinding one eye before battle. A single candle glowed. He sketched quickly. A long stone table crowned by carved direwolves. A woman in gray furs standing beside a weathered man with a white streak in his beard. The flicker of green fire dancing along a vaulted roof. He drew a final line. A dragon's scaled talon laid gently across a wooden throne. Then folded the parchment and sealed it with wax bearing the three-headed dragon, though no royal seal had carried such weight in a generation. The Iron Throne still existed, rusting in its gloom, but the court that once worshipped it now resembled a skeleton picked clean by carrion crows. Nobles came and went only when bribes outweighed dread. Small folk avoided the Red Keep's shadow, murmuring that ghosts walked where heirs had once learned to toddle. Daron's survival had not erased their scars. It had merely shifted them into new shapes. He rose, laced wool leggings, shrugged into a quilted tunic dyed deep jade, the color of Viridian scales, and fastened a leather gorget bearing the stylized dragon. Emissaries claimed the emblem looked more stark than Targaryen, yet he insisted it spoke of union rather than dilution. An uneasy peace required new banners as much as new laws. He had written both on countless nights, pen gnawing at ideals while ravens crossed storm-shattered skies toward lordly keeps. Responses varied from cautious praise to veiled threats, but each scroll returned served as proof that the realm still breathed. Down narrow stairs he descended, boots echoing between blackened walls. Summerhall remained half ruin, half sanctuary. Heat shimmered from a dozen braziers set beneath cracked ribs of glass that once formed the great solar. Maesters argued to rebuild, but Daron refused. Let the fragments stand, a reminder of fires stoked by arrogance. If he ever wore a crown, it would be forged in humility's coals. For now, he and Rhaella, queen no longer, widow evermore, ruled from broken corridors, hosting small councils where sparrows perched in rafters. Some courtiers scoffed, others found the starkness honest. All agreed that no other keep felt safer, for Viridian circled the turrets nightly, embers seething between his fangs. The dragon awaited him on the sky court, dew glimmering across emerald plating. Viridian's eyes, luminous as molten peridot, fixed on his rider with recognition older than language. Daron pressed a palm to the ridged snout. South first, he whispered. Then north. A flick of wings answered. The prince swung into the light saddle, little more than oiled leather and braided mithril rings, and cinched himself in place. He could have summoned grooms, but he preferred the solace of dawn flights unobserved, except by watchful gods. Viridian launched. Stone fell away. Wind punched cold through Daron's sleeves. Summerhall shrank, its ruined domes resembling broken eggshells strewn across forested hills. They banked east, chasing the widening glow that birthed thin clouds of peach and wine. Below, the Kingswood unspooled in rumpled velvet. Deer startled at their passing, and once a cluster of white-winged gulls took flight, thinking a storm was upon them. The prince guided his mount over the tumblestone, tracing its argent coils toward a hamlet recently rebuilt after wild dragonfire razed its granaries. Children ran to the riverbank, waving prisms of color torn from sheets in greeting. Daron smiled despite himself. A year ago those same villagers would have cowered. An hour later, they descended toward an island fort girding Blackwater Bay's mouth. Maester Pat, steward to Lord Massey, awaited atop the square tower with arms full of scrolls sealed in green wax. Messages for the north, trade agreements, grain requests, promises of low-interest loans, backed by Casterly Rock's gold. For even a Lannister benefited when roads ran safe and ports swelled with spice. Daron signed each parchment against Viridian's folded wing, mindful of the quill's tremble under his gauntlet. He could order a scribe to forge signatures, but he believed weightier vows demanded his own wrists ache. Maester Pat's final offering, however, was neither letter nor ledger. It was a dirk, slender, shrouded in oiled cloth. "Recovered from smugglers off Massey's Hook, your grace," the maester murmured, voice rasping like parchment torn. "Curious steel." Daron unwound the wrappings and hissed. Not steel at all. Dragon glass, carved into a stiletto so thin the sun shone through its green-black core. The handle bore a Bervosi coin pressed into the pommel, a hollow-eyed visage. The fang of the Faceless. So the small folk dubbed these relics, though none had been found intact. An assassin tumbled into Summerhall's undercroft. "How many carried?" Daron asked. "Only one, we think." Crew swore it belonged to a passenger lost at sea. Pat's lined brow tightened. No name among them. But they had Bravosi charts. Daron nodded, sliding the dirk into his saddlebag. "Send the crew north under guard. No cells. Honest work on the forest roads. Those who labor for peace seldom sell knives again." Pat bowed low. Mercy cost less than prisons, and bred loyalty deeper than fear. That truth Daron had borrowed from ancient Rhoynar treatises, buried under moldy maester tomes. He hoped it proved more than fancy ink. Viridian launched once more, bearing prints and secrets into the brightening sky. By midday they crossed the mouth of the Trident, wheeling northward over fields patched with winter rye. Farmers paused mid-harvest to mark the glittering beast. Some knelt. Others offered cautious waves, as if courting a capricious god. None loosed arrows. Those bold enough to try in prior years had found royal pardons overshadowed by claw-carved furrows in barn roofs. Dragons, Daron knew, did not forgive lightly. Hours later, gray mists swallowed the land like a slow tide. Pines bristled beneath hoarfrost, and streams wore rims of brittle silver. The north. Viridian's breath steamed sapphire. Far ahead, a cliff crowned by timbers pierced the gloom. Moat Caelan, still a ruin of broken towers yet vital, as the neck's only northern gate. Soldiers clad in stark gray and white waved torches on the causeway. Daron guided Viridian to a light beyond arrow range and approached on foot, helm in crook of arm, dirk hidden up his sleeve. Etiquette demanded caution. Even invited guests might harbor spies. Lord Rickon's banner flew, the leaping direwolf flanked by two broken chains, and beneath it stood the man himself, snow streaking his hair, wolfskin cloak whipping in the northern gale. At his side, a tall woman in slate furs regarded Daron with eyes as blue as shattered glass. When introductions concluded, she stepped forward. "Lady Lyara Karstark," she announced, voice low as distant thunder. "Steward of Winterfell in my lord's absences." She examined Viridian with neither awe nor fear. "A fine beast," she said at last, turning back to Daron. "Will he dine before or after council?" "After," Daron answered, matching her steady gaze. "Dragons prefer meat after victories." A subtle test. Lady Lyra inclined her head, yielding neither sarcasm nor nervous mirth. Strong ground indeed. Moat Caelan's central hall smelled of pitch, wolfhide, and damp stone. Tapers sputtered in iron sconces while Stark officers gathered around a rough-hewn map table carved from a single weirwood plank, veins of red running through pale grain like frozen blood. Daron placed his sealed letters between two pewter flagons. Lord Rickon traced the southern roads etched in charcoal. "Ambitious lines," he muttered, voice rumbling like avalanche. "Stone bridges across the neck, timber causeways wide enough for wagons. Every engineer from Barrowton to Bitterbridge will cry for coin." "They'll have it," Daron replied. "Grain tariffs from the Reach underwrite half, Lannister loans the rest. In return, the North supplies timber and hires displaced small folk as paid labor. Hungry men become builders, not brigands." Rickon tapped calloused fingers on the map, dot-eyed. "Coin warms bellies, but fear of winged fire still chills hearts. Your dragon may guard the roads, yet some worry one man commanding such might invites tyranny. My dragon obeys me, Daron said quietly, and I obey a realm that demands justice. Monarchs forgot that truth. Dragons did not. He withdrew the dragon-glass dirt. Torches flickered across its edge. Someone still wishes Targaryens dead. This rose from the deeps near Massey's Hook. Silence deepened. A young captain crossed himself with the seven-pointed star. Another spat into the hearth. Rickon's gaze darkened. Bravos again, he growled. Perhaps, Daron allowed. But coin buys faces anywhere. I came to ask the North's witness when I lay these blades before the Iron Bank and the Sea Lord both. He gestured to the map lines. If trade flows north freely, Bravos profits. They must choose. Pursue old grudges or embrace new gold. Men are one. Lady Lyra's lips curved, almost amused. Bravosi seldom refuse profit, but grudges endure, especially those paid in blood. If they claim a debt, will you bleed to settle it? Better one prince bleeds than 1,000 small folk burn, Daron answered. Yet, I hope neither proves necessary. He met Rickon's eyes. Travel south with me. Sign these accords. Let Small Council and Northern Hall echo the same promise in a single moose turn. Then not even shadows dare break the realm again. Rickon's breath plumed frost. At length, he nodded. I will ride, but I must see the dragon's temper first. He pointed toward Viridian resting beyond shattered walls. Tomorrow at dawn we hunt frost elk. My men fear fire. Show them a dragon's mercy. Daron accepted. He knew the test. Dragons were destruction made flesh, yet to rule they must also be shepherds. If Viridian brought down prey without raising woodland or rending courtiers, Rickon would judge the green dread a force worth following. Failure meant the North remained apart, leaving Daron's fragile coalition exposed. That night Daron retired to a tower chamber whose windows overlooked the next misty waterways. He unrolled his morning sketch. The woman beside Rickon in his dream wore the same slate furs as Lyra Karstark. The green fire in the rafters had glimmered in her eyes. Dreams seldom lied, though they blurred edges. He dipped quill again and added a single line. A dragon's talon touching the dire wolf carved into the wooden throne. Unity was not a crown, but a clasp. He slept fitfully, wind whistling through arrow slits. Near dawn he woke to muffled shouts. He jerked upright, hand on dagger. Through the frosted glass he saw torchlight streaking across the inner yard. Viridian's deep growl rolled like thunder. Daron bolted down spiral stairs, boots skidding across icy steps. Out in the yard, stark guards surrounded a squirming figure pinned beneath the dragon's foreclaw. Viridian's fangs hovered inches above a hooded head. Black clothing told one tale, but the bloody dragonglass shard poking from the captive's glove confirmed another. An assassin slaughtered by silence, discovered by scent. Daron raised a hand, calm, soft, but commanding. Viridian lifted his claw just enough for 2 guards to haul the prisoner free. The captive spat curses in Valyrian so guttural even Daron's tutors never taught them. Lady Lyra strode from the gatehouse, hair wild in the dawn breeze. She carried a bow half-drawn. 3rd this season, she said. They slip through the neck like ghosts. Not ghosts, Daron replied, kneeling. He tugged off the prisoner's curved dagger. Another Bravosi coin glimmered in the pommel. His stomach tightened. No one came for me at Summerhall because they saved their strength for the road. He addressed the prisoner in Bravosi. Why flay a wolf to strike a dragon? The assassin's lip curled. Orders. No more. Rickon arrived, war axe over shoulder. Hang him, growled the lord. Let crows learn our law. Daron touched the jade coin on his gorget. A corpse tells nothing. Give me 1 day. He faced the assassin again. Confess, and I'll ask the many-faced god to grant you quick passage. Refuse, and you ride south in chains to those you failed. Fear flickered behind the assassin's steely calm. South to Bravos? No, Daron said. To the Sea Lord's Bank, where debts are paid slowly. That did it. Bravosi dreaded debtor cells more than death. The captive swallowed. Words poured. Names of silent patrons hidden among old Volantine merchant guilds, whispers of a conclave within Heir that minted coin disguised as show tokens, and above all a phrase repeated like a prayer. The balance is unsettled. The assassin claimed their masters believed prophecy demanded parity. That one surviving dragonborn must never surpass a mortal lifespan for fear magic would tilt dominion toward fire. Rickon scoffed. Prophets crave coin like any charlatan. Yet prophecy moves men, Daron murmured. And men move knives. He ordered the captive bound beside Viridian. Take him south. I'll meet you at White Harbor once the hunt concludes. The hunt. Dawn's pale disk had barely breached the wetlands. Daron approached Viridian, pressed forehead to warm scales. Gentle, he whispered. Blood enough for fear, but spare the earth. The dragon's pupils narrowed to slits. The prince mounted. They swept north of the moat, snow swirling into spirals around Viridian's wingtips. Below, a herd of frost elk traversed a frozen tarn. Rickon's riders shadowed on shaggy mounts, their breaths clouds. Daron guided Viridian into a slow glide, letting shadow fall over the herd. The elk scattered. One stag, colossal, broke from the mass. Viridian tucked wings, talons outstretched. Then, at Daron's whistle, shifted, grazing the beast's flank rather than crushing it. The stag tumbled, ribs broken but lungs intact. Dismounting, Daron strode through powder drifts, drew a hunting knife, and slit the stag's throat with one clean stroke. Blood steamed. A sacrifice swift, without flame. He raised his hand in salute to Rickon's riders. Some stared in awe. Others lowered spears in respectful silence. No trees torched, no hill scorched. Only a meal claimed. Back within Moat Cailin, cooks prepared the venison with onions and root herbs. Daron personally fed Viridian choice haunches far from camp, stroking the beast's scaled jaw. When he returned, he found Rickon and Liara standing beside the weirwood map, fresh ink glistening on parchments. We sign at dawn tomorrow, Rickon declared. North rides south, dragon rides north. Trade and blood both. He extended a scarred hand. Daron clasped it. Later, as snow deepened into drifts along the causeway, Liara lingered in the hall. She studied the prince, not the dragon lord, but the man who dreamt of roads. I've seen wolf dreams all my life, she said softly, gaze drifting to the window where Viridian's silhouette blurred against gray sky. They guide us northlings, visions of storms, of shadows in the godswood. But never have I dreamt of a dragon until nights ago. She unpinned a scrap of cloth from her belt, a simple child's drawing, charcoal lines uncertain. It depicted a dire wolf curled around a hatchling with green wings. My niece draws what I dream, she explained. I thought it nonsense. Until you came. Daron turned the parchment, comparing to his own dawn sketch. The lines matched, though drawn by a child's hand. Dreams converge, he murmured. Perhaps prophecy cuts two blades, one forged in ice, one in fire. Together they reap chaos clean. He glanced up. Will the North accept fusion? The North accepts truth, Liara said. Even when it bites. Her fingers brushed the jade clasp at his throat. If fire promises no chains, wolves will howl in welcome. Council concluded. Feasting lasted till moonrise. Minstrels strummed reed pipes while stark bannermen drank thick ale, toasting dragon and wolf alike. Daron slipped out to the battlements, chill wind biting cheeks flushed by mead. Viridian coiled on the outer wall, chest rising like bellows. The prince leaned against a merlon, eyeing the distant glow where marsh fires burned. Somewhere beyond those lights, conspirators plotted. But for the first night in memory, unity felt tangible. Not ink on parchment, but shared hearth and hunted meat. He exhaled into the night and spoke softly to no one. Let the balance settle on peace. Stars flickered like cold embers. Beyond them, perhaps the many-faced god weighed new scales. If so, Daron prayed the weights curved toward love of realm over lust for knives. At dawn they departed Moat Cailin in procession. Rickon and his captains on shaggy destriers, Daeron astride Viridian overhead, banners streaming. Within 3 days, they reached White Harbor, city of white stone sparkling against frigid surf. Lord Manderley greeted them with spiced wine and news. Fleets from Heir had slipped anchor, rumored to sail west with sellsword companies aboard. Worse, Braavos Sea Lord had issued a cryptic decree. All debts deferred till balance restored. Coin manifestly withheld. Daeron's hopes of negotiation cracked like lake ice under sudden weight. Still, he penned letters pleading for diplomacy, dispatched ravens bearing Stark and Targaryen seals entwined. Symbols mattered. While ravens flew, Daeron convened with Manderley shipwrights. They proposed retrofitting longships to bear wildfire casks, deterrence, not aggression. Daeron agreed on one condition: each cask inscribed with the dire wolf dragon sigil, warning all that northern flame differed from southern conquest. Fear must never masquerade as liberation. On the 7th night, nets hauled from the Bight delivered an unexpected catch. A sailor adrift on broken spar, half frozen, raving in high Valyrian. Once warmed by hearth, he spoke of a corsair queen controlling the stepstones, claiming descent from the ancient line of Orion Pentos, a bastard strand of Valyria D. She named herself Aelith Stormborn and styled her flagship the Ghost of Valyria. Her stated aim: capture a living dragon and forge an empire from Essos to Dorne. She counted Braavosi financiers among her patrons. The Mirish fleet he'd escaped bore her banner, a crimson dragon missing one head, wings curling around a golden coin. Daeron felt dread coil. Capturing a hatchling proved possible. A grown dragon, scarcely. Yet Vitidian was still young, his scales not unbreakable. Worse, rumors of riderless brutes near Driftmark enticed any would-be conqueror. Should Aelith master one, fragile peace would shatter. He summoned Rickon, Manderley, and Liara to strategize. White Harbor's sea tower became war room. Maesters piled charts. Captains argued sail patterns. Rickon favored intercepting the Mirish fleet at sea. Liara suggested assassinating Aelith before she reached the stepstones. Poetic justice to wield faceless tactics against a false dragon. Daeron listened, brow furrowed, before shaking his head. If we murder her unseen, her zealots claim martyrdom. Better a trial witnessed by Realm and Braavos both. And fleets at sea risk dragons above. He proposed an unprecedented gambit: invite Aelith to King's Landing for parley under guest right, promising demonstration of dragon power, a lure no claimant could refuse. Meanwhile, Stark longbowmen would line the Red Keep's walls, wildfire casks hidden in sculpted gargoyles above the throne room. A show of unstoppable, disciplined fire aimed not at cities, but at treachery. If Aelith yielded, Braavosi debtors might reconsider, seeing profit in alliance with true dragon union. If she struck, flames would answer. Rickon hesitated. Guest right violated ends every pact North holds sacred. I will not break guest right, Daeron said. But I will bear witness, for the gods see the heart before the hearth. If she plots murder under my roof, her own blood curses her. Preparations began. Ravens thundered across skies, swift as portent. In White Harbor's shipyard, Viridian curled while Stark smiths fitted iron scale bands to vulnerable joints, a living armor that left wings free. Daeron trained daily, tilting across the shore on Viridian's back, practicing flame bursts that scorched bullseye targets without igniting watchtowers. Harpoons tipped with dragonglass were tested by Manderley mariners, though Daeron prayed never to face such weapons himself. A fortnight later, a Myrish galley bearing Aelith Stormborn's sigil approached the harbor. She disembarked, tall, silver-haired, clad in lacquered crimson armor, eyes gleaming with the restless hunger of burning coals. She knelt before Daeron, yet her smile curled like a dagger drawn slow. "Cousin," she said in Valyrian warmer than summer wine. "8. Last the blood of old Valyria meets again." He raised her, noting Market's hush as townsfolk sensed tempest in her poise. "Blood is bond," he answered, "but bond is not chain. What seek you here?" "Destiny," she purred. "Dragons must rule, else mortals squander the world." Her gaze slid to Viridian like a lover's caress. "Join me, and we herald a new triarchy. Fire, coin, and sword. Resist, and balance bleeds." Her lips brushed his ear, whisper carrying threat and promise alike. Daeron stepped back. "Guest right shields you within these walls," he said aloud, ensuring crowds heard. "Tomorrow we sail south, to convene under realm's laws. There you may speak before lords and small folk both." Aelith bowed, but defiance smoldered in her eyes. That night Daeron sent secret raven to Braavos. Scroll bearing 3 words, "Balance through Union tie." He sealed it with a twin sigil, wolf circled by dragon, and prayed a bolder faction within the Sea Lord's court might seize chance for profit. He then sought Rickon atop the sea tower. The northern lord leaned on rampart, studying constellations. "Can wolves trust dragons who court serpents?" he asked without turning. "Trust no ears," Daeron answered, "only acts." He unfurled a fresh parchment, the child's drawing Lyara had gifted him. "This," he murmured, "is prophecy enough." Stars shimmered, winking like distant watchfires. Rickon exhaled mist and clasped Daeron's shoulder. "Then let the world see it flame." Morning broke lilac and gold. Viridian crouched on the quay, harness fitted, eyes narrowed at Aelith's corsair retinue. Daeron mounted. Aelith's gaze flicked between dragon and rider. Hunger, calculation, envy. She boarded the flagship Ghost of Valyria. Sails billowed, bearing their unlikely fleet toward King's Landing. The wind carried brine and premonition. Somewhere ahead, the Red Keep's crumbling towers awaited judgment, not of swords but of wills. 3 days into voyage, disaster struck. Off the coast of Crackclaw Point, fires erupted on the Myrish grain ships trailing their armada. Saboteurs among Aelith's crew unleashed wildfire barrels in the holds, hoping to mask theft of captured driftwood eggs stashed below. Flames roared emerald against black sky. Daeron, roused from canvas tent on deck, urged Viridian skyward. Rain hammered wings as they swooped toward the burning hulks. Sailors leapt into churning waters. The prince guided his dragon in tight arcs, ordering short breaths of searing blue that carved fire breaks along the deck edges, containing the wild inferno until rain smothered it. Twice Viridian's talons fished drowning men from white-capped waves, depositing them upon debris where longboats retrieved them. Watching from her flagship, Aelith studied Daeron's rescue with unreadable expression. When the last survivor hauled himself aboard, she ordered horns sounded, not in triumph but respect. That night, beneath makeshift awnings, Myrish and northern healers bound Burns side by side. 2 factions glimpsed one another without pretense of coin or crown. Peace, like metal, forged hottest in flame. Still, suspicion festered. Lyra discovered a mutinous scheme. Corsairs planned to yank rigging lines when Viridian next took flight, entangling wings. She slit ropes under moonlight, burning the frayed ends so no saboteur could retie them. Daeron confronted Aelith at dawn. She met his accusation with proud tilt. "My men fear what they cannot ride," she said. "I promise only that loyalty is earned, not bought." He countered, "Then earn it with honor, not plots." She laughed, an edge of steel. "We shall see whose songs the minstrels choose." 5 days later, they sighted Dragonstow's jagged silhouette. Daeron's heart hammered as Viridian spiraled above ancient towers where Balerion once perched. Crumbling parapets hid nests of riderless beasts. 3 wild dragons gleamed from driftwood eggs. They stirred at Viridian's call, wings tattering storm clouds, but none challenged the Jade Drake's dominance. Instead they followed at a wary distance, as wolves shadow an elder alpha. Aelith disembarked onto the dragon-forged bridge, marvel in her eyes. "One of these is mine," she breathed. "None," Daeron corrected. "Dragons choose riders, attempt to bind them, and realm bleeds anew." She glanced sideways, half smile. "Then let them choose." Before he could object, she strode across the courtyard toward a crimson-scaled brute, sunning itself on Basel. The dragon's yellow eyes tracked her approach, tongue tasting air. Aelith extended a hand. For one breath. Silence. Then the brute snarled, wings flaring. Liara shouted, but Aelith stood rooted. Fire hissed in the dragon's throat. Viridian slammed earthward between them, tail thrashing. Flames met jade scales, scorching but not piercing. Daron astride shouted in Valyrian, "Yield!" The crimson dragon recoiled, uttering guttural bellow, then lumbered into the air, beating away toward open sea. Aelith staggered back, face flushed with fury. "He would have bent," she hissed. "He would have burned you," Daron said, voice hoarse with smoke. Dragons bow to none save truth. Her fingers flexed like claws. Then perhaps truth must be broken. She spun on heel, cloak whipping, leaving the courtyard seething with scorched air. That night storms battered Dragonstone. Lightning forked above the stone drum, illuminating Viridian perched vigilant on the battlements. Daron paced the war room, scrolls spread across a table carved in shape of Valyria before doom. Liara entered, damp cloak dripping. "A Myrish lieutenant confesses," she said. Aelith's true aim. Seize Driftmark's hatchlings, then march on King's Landing when guests gather. Under guise of peace, storm the throne. Down? Daron's stomach clenched. Guest right betrayed would echo across ages. He whispered, "Balance indeed." False peace weighed against blood. He pressed palms to the ancient map. Dot. We strike first, but not with steel, with revelation. At dawn he summoned Aelith beneath the Dragonmont arch Dada. Seastone glimmered as waves smashed below. He presented the dragonglass dirk, the assassin's confession bound to its hilt. "Proof of conspirators within your fleet," he said, voice echoing through salt-laden air. "Release them to my custody. Renounce claim to any dragon not freely bonded, and I will shield you at court. Refuse, and I reveal your plot to all, marking you oathbreaker before we ever land." Aelith studied the dirk, bitter wind, tousling silver hair. "You would shame me. Yet you offer sanctuary. Why?" "Because even traitors may choose redemption," he answered. "Peace requires foes become allies." She looked beyond him to Viridian, wings catching dawn's first rose. In her gaze, envy warred with admiration. Finally, she extended the dirk toward him. "Hilt first, then teach me how dragons choose," she said quietly. "Perhaps they see worth in broken things." They sailed for King's Landing under banners entwined. Three-headed dragon, jade and crimson, direwolf rampant beneath. Rumors raced ahead. Small folk lined the Blackwater quays when the fleet arrived, their cheers tentative but swelling. From atop Aegon's Hill, the Iron Throne's twisted spines glinted through breached walls. Daron dismounted in Redkeep's courtyard where wildfire casks lay hidden beneath carved gargoyles. He knelt, pressing palm to ground that had drunk dynasties. "No more knives in cradles," he whispered. Inside the throne room, cobwebs clung to pillars, yet torchlight revealed a freshly laid carpet of wolf gray and dragon green. Lords gathered. Lannister, Tyrell, Greyjoy, even dour Baratheon emissaries. Rickon stood near dais, axe grounded. Aelith entered, crimson armor gleaming. At her back trailed corsairs stripped of weapons, hands bound in white ribbons, surrender tokens. Gasps rippled as she bowed to Daron before the throne. He addressed the assembly. Years of silence birthed fear. Fear fed knives that cut futures from stone. Today, heirs kneel not for subjugation, but for balance. He unfurled treaties signed at Moat Cailin, at White Harbor, at Dragonstone Taut. Each bore twin seals. Aelith raised her head. "I pursued dragons to rule," she said, voice carrying clear. "This prince taught me dragons rule only themselves, and we, Only by worth. I offer ships, coin and sword to forge roads of peace. If realm accepts, I serve. If realm rejects, I depart, my ambition buried here." Truth hung in the hush. At last Lord Tyrell stepped forward. "The Reach will seed these roads with grain," he proclaimed. Lady Margaery, young, flame-haired, echoed, "And flowers." One by one, lords pledged resources. Even Lord Royce of the Vale, skeptical as Mount Goats, declared, "Stone for bridges, steel for peace." Rickon pressed his palm to Aelith's shoulder, approving. In galleries above, small folk shouted acclamations. Amid the roar, Daeron felt something vast uncoil, a shadow lifting. Yet balance remained fragile. High above, in the gargoyle shadows, a thin figure notched a raven-feathered arrow, tipped with lurid green. One last faceless zealot, twisting prophecy to dagger point. The assassin drew bead on Daeron's heart. Liara, patrolling balcony, spotted the glint, loosed her own shaft. Wood cracked. 2 arrows sang. One clattered harmless against throne's iron. The faceless man toppled from parapet, falling among spines of melted blades. Silence slammed the hall, then erupted in uproar as guards swarmed. Daeron touched his chest where arrow would have pierced. He glanced to Liara, offering nod heavy with gratitude. She answered with slight smile, a wolf's grin, fierce and fleeting. In that moment, he understood dreams fulfilled not by destiny alone, but by hands willing to bear its weight. Later, as moonlight silvered the black water, Daeron and Aelith stood on Maidenvault balcony. Viridian roosted on the ruined tower opposite. Above him, 2 riderless dragons wheeled, drawn by his call yet left free. Aelith sipped wine, considering star-flecked waters. "Do you trust me now?" she asked. "Trust is seed," Daeron replied. "It must grow." She traced rim of goblet. "Then water it with truth. I still yearn for a dragon's bond." He regarded her earnest face. "When one chooses you, I will not stand between." He gestured skyward. "But if none do, your ship remains welcome." She inclined her head, eyes human for once. Neither conqueror nor captive, only woman gazing at possibility. From the fields beyond the city, hammer blows rang as laborers cleared rubble for new roads. Lanterns bobbed along walls where banners of direwolf and dragon snapped in river breeze. Daeron exhaled, sensing the realm hold breath with him. Balance. No god's decree, but a choice renewed every dawn by every hand. In the hush, a raven croaked, settling on railing. A white ribbon bound its leg. Message from Braavos. Daeron detached the scroll. Debts reconsidered pending envoy. Below, a single coin rubbed to brightness. The Sea Lord had taken bait, profit called louder than blood. Smiling, Daeron pocketed it beside the dragonglass dirk. Relics of past and future twinned. He turned toward the throne room where lords debated timber and coin, where small folk repaired shattered stone, where wolves and dragons together marked new maps. The child's drawing lay upon the seat's first step, direwolf curled round jade hatchling, placed there by Liara earlier in ceremony. He lifted it. Heart lifting too. Prophecy, he mused, is dream's shadow. But dreams, once shared, become roads to walk. Beyond, Viridian loosed a low bellow. 2 riderless dragons echoed, their cries rolling across the city. Fires yet to burn shimmered in those voices, not of war, but of hearths newly lit along roads yet unmade, of forges shaping plowshares rather than swords. Daeron stood with wind in his hair, coin of Braavos warm in his palm, and believed, for the first time since knives found cradles, that balance could indeed settle on peace, so long as mortal wills rose each day to hold it steady, like hands guiding a dragon's reins through storm-ridden skies. Rain glazed the cobblestones of the Red Keep's outer yard in a thin sheen that mirrored half-lit torches and the restless shimmer of dragonfire in the clouds. For 3 days the Braavosi envoys had waited inside Maegor's holdfast, cloaked in velvet patience, while scribes scurried like nervous mice between audience chambers and counting rooms. Their chests of ledgers and embossed seals, stood stacked like little fortresses around the vaulted solar, where Prince Daeron paced each night, until candles guttered into smoke. Viridian, roosted on the scorched ruin of the king's gate, answered that smoke with thin coils of his own, as if to remind every banker that numbers burned more easily than oaths. The negotiations began at dawn on the fourth day, when the storm clouds broke just long enough for a pale shaft of sunlight to arrow through the cracked stained glass of the throne room's western window. High Magistrate Tycho Ilarion, slender, silver-haired, his rings heavy with mother-of-pearl, bowed to the crownless prince and spread parchment the length of a coffin on the steps below the Iron Throne. The Iron Bank, he said in a voice tuned for echoes, would see the realm solvent, its interests aligned with prosperity instead of peril. Yet the ledger shows unpaid debts tall as the wall, with interest compounding like winter storms. Daeron stood bareheaded, jade dragon wolf clasp at his throat catching the sun's blade. And yet, he replied, the bank lent freely to lords who armed rebels, to corsairs who hunted dragons, to zealots who sent knives against cradles. Shall I pay for swords, raised against my own blood? Tycho smiled with the patience of deep water. A dragon's breath can melt iron, yet owed coin remains coin even in slag. Our proposal: recognize the debt. 1/2, if that eases pride, then stabilize it with tariffs on the new northern roads. Then Terwend. Rickon Stark spoke before Daeron could. The North does not pay a single copper wolf to men who loaned cutthroats our blood. His voice shook banners overhead. We build roads with pine and stone, not broken vows. Across the chamber, Aelith Stormborn lounged at the edge of the lesser council dais, crimson armor gleaming like a heartbeat in steel. Coin, she murmured, is loyalty conjured from air. Give them profit, and they'll forget daggers soon enough. Her smile to Tycho was razor thin. Daeron lifted a hand. The realm will honor debts that foster growth, not murder. The bank will forgive those financed in shadow, in exchange for exclusive tariffs on stepstone shipping for 7 years. He turned to Aelith. And the Corsair Queen guarantees safe sea lanes. Tycho's brow lifted the width of a quill. An intriguing percentage. 10, Daeron said. 15, Tycho countered. 11, and a royal charter to mint quarters, bearing the Sea Lord's visage on one face and the twin sigil on the other. Merchants who trade with us will carry bravas in their purses. The magistrate considered. Rickon's glare bored into him like a cold drill. At last, Tycho's lips curved. 11, plus half the first year's coin paid in gemstones. The bank values liquidity. He struck the parchment with a jade stamp, sealing fresh wax. The balance, he said, leans toward profit. When his retinue withdrew, trailing a perfume of old vellum and newer greed, Daeron felt his muscles untwist. Yet victory tasted thin. Each concession bound the realm tighter to powers that had once purchased its despair. He descended the throne steps to Rickon, who scowled as if smelling rot. I bargained beyond pride, Daeron said quietly. Buy time, forge roads, hatch trust. When coin fattened their purses, they will fear war more than any prince. Ay, Rickon rumbled. But wolves remember debts deeper than ledgers. He clapped the prince's shoulder, rumble softening. You've carved a path none before dared. See it walk true. Then dire. By midsummer, the first span of Daeron's new King's Road north rose from marsh and mire. Beechwood pilings driving through bog to rest on ancient granite shelves. Small folk from the Reach labored beside whalers out of White Harbor and freedmen ferried down from Sisterton, all fed from granaries Tyrell gold kept brimmed. Lyara Karstark oversaw the camps with a soldier's eye, food weighed, quarrels judged, coffers balanced nightly. Rumor claimed she slept with Warbow for a pillow, but never once loosed a shaft without cause. One evening, as a lavender dusk folded over the neck, she found Daeron standing alone at the outer palisade. He watched laborers haul rope along timber beams that glowed amber under lantern light. A king forges crowns from sweat, he said when she stopped beside him. If bridges hold, no army need ever breach the neck again. She studied his face, cheeks hollowed with unvoiced worry, violet eyes ringed by maps of sleepless nights. Bridges hold, she replied, when stone fits stone. Fit yourself, Prince. Eat, rest. She offered a small burlap pouch. Inside lay dried lingonberries and strips of cured elk. From Winterfell stores. He accepted with a tired nod, chewing thoughtfully while gulls cried overhead. After a moment he asked, "Do you ever miss snow when you're so far south?" "I miss silence," she said. "Snow hushes the world. Down here, water keeps speaking." She tipped her head to the marsh reeds, rattling like bones just beyond torchlight. "Yet the road teaches new songs. Listen." Daron closed his eyes. Layered voices rose. Hammer on spike, saw against oak, a Lysine foreman humming bawdy tunes half the crew repeated. Above them, threaded deeper notes. Bullfrogs, distant wolf howl, the slow creak of timbers settling into mud. A string section of living effort. When he opened his eyes, he smiled. Music of realms rebuilding. That night, in his tent smelling of fresh canvas and river silt, Daron dreamed ice again. A moon-pale expanse where twin dragons flew, jade and sapphire twining above a keep built of frost. They landed on crystalline towers and roared until the sky fractured in aurora colors. At the peak of that kaleidoscopic shiver stood a woman crowned in snow, cloak of direwolf fur draped over scaled pauldrons. She raised an obsidian sword to the heavens and the aurora ignited, forging cascades of green-blue flame that washed south across hills and cities. He woke drenched in sweat despite the humid night. The dream clung like frost. Beyond the wall, winter stirred. Long barrow winds whispered across sentinel pines. Ghost lights pulsed on far horizons, pale blue, flickering like breath in glass. The Night's Watch, reduced in both numbers and noble names, sent raven after raven south. Something walks that died long ago. Most ravens vanished into storm-heavy skies before crossing the gift. Those that limped through arrived at Winterfell carrying broken feathers and shards of ice crusting beaks. Maester Wallis read the warnings to Rickon beside the Godswood's heart tree. The old lord's gaze narrowed. If half these tales true, we need dragons sooner than bridges. He dispatched riders to Castle Black with kegs of lamp oil and bundles of dragonglass arrows, left over from old lore. Relics Lyanna had unearthed in a collapsed Wintertown cellar. He also sent word to Daron, bring fire north before snows do. The message reached the prince as he inspected arch supports at Maiden's Fall, a minor ford approaching completion. He reread the letter 3 times, each pass tightening his jaw. Then he sealed a writ appointing Sir Jorrell Bywater, a knight of middling birth and tireless energy, as steward of roadworks until spring. At dusk, he summoned Lyanna to his pavilion. She arrived mud-spattered, smelling of pine tar. He held out the letter. "The wall calls." Her brows knit. "God, dragons?" He nodded. "Viridian and I fly at dawn. I'd ask you ride with us, but—" "I will," she said before he finished. "On horse. Someone must measure river crossings for the last spans." He hesitated. "It's near 600 leagues to Castle Black." She shrugged. "Wolves run farther. When the dragon returns south, the road needs eyes of winter's blood." Bender. Their gazes held. Something unspoken bound the silence, an oath not yet sworn, an ember not yet flame. The dawn flight carried Daron high above Storm's End's jagged coastline, viridian scales flashing like wet emerald in first light. By midday he crossed Torrhen Square. By night he soared above the dread supremacies of Grey Wind beyond the last river. Viridian's roar scattered watchful eagles. On the second dawn the wall reared white as a dying god against a sky bruised purple. Castle Black lay below, torches flickering on walkways, thin plumes of smoke curling from frost-rimed chimneys. Lord Commander Talric Marsh awaited on the courtyard flagstones, raven cloak stiff with ice. He bowed stiffly as Daron dismounted, boots crunching hoarfrost. "Your father's kin rarely came here, your grace. Yet we said, one day the realm's doom would cross this yard with wings. His eyes flicked to Viridian trembling wings on the training yard's outer wall. I pray this doom is salvation. Inside the king's tower, maps unloved for generations lay unrolled across a stone table scarred by sword practice. Blackened fingers of the frost fangs, red E's marking wildling raids around Hardhome, and further north, crude sketches of shapes, like barbed crowns. My rangers speak of corpses that rise, Marsh said. Eyes blue as mountain ice, skin pale as new-struck snow. We burned those bodies, but more appear. Something drives them south, gathering survivors into ranks. Darren traced a line of small black stones creeping toward the shivering sea. How soon before they test the wall? Marsh blew into cupped hands. Before first leaf fall, if the snows run late. Earlier if they see cold while it's still warm. He met Darren's gaze with quiet desperation. Fire stops them, and dragonglass. We have little of either. Darren's thoughts raced. Wildfire casks left in King's Landing, dragonglass blades in Summerhall Armory, but supply chains narrow B1D. He studied Viridian through arrow-slit windows, green shrouded in swirling snowflakes, though it was high summer. A single dragon can scorch a battlefield, he said slowly, but not patrol 300 miles of ice. We need more. Marsh's brow furrowed. More dragons. More riders, Darren answered. Riderless beasts haunt the isles near Driftmark. If I failed to tame them, perhaps someone northern-born might. The dream's aurora echoed in his memory. 2 days later, a raven reached Winterfell. Layara, now halfway along the New King's Road, traveling with a company of Manderley carpenters, read the scroll by campfire. It bore only 3 words in High Valyrian, penned in Darren's swift hand. Sapphire awaits north. Her pulse quickened. She ordered horses saddled, leaving steward Tall Tom Allen in charge of works. She rode through dawn-washed rain, urging her destrier Glasshoof, faster than road carters thought sane. By fortnight's end, she crested the ridge overlooking Winterfell's smoking chimneys. Rickon met her in the gatehouse, embrace fierce. Heard the prince rode the wall, he said. Brought fire to old ice. He studied her travel-worn face. And calls for you. Something stirs. She replied, a dragon maybe, or prophecy's claws. That night, under the weirwood's red gaze, she dreamed of a sapphire-scaled hatchling coiled around shattered iron, its wings stitched with silver frost. When she woke, the first snowflakes of the year spiraled down, months early. She saddled Glasshoof and rode north once more. This time toward Eastwatch by the sea, where watchmen spoke of strange lights over Skagos. Skagos. The name hissed in taverns like a curse. Jutted from the bay in knife-edged ridges, its cliffs riddled with caves where legends said unicorns thrived and cannibals sharpened black-bone knives. Lyra arrived aboard the Wave Cleaver, a stout Manderley sloop, with only 3 companions. Kelvin Snow, the quartermaster, Maester Arn of White Harbor, and Nera, a silent spearwife captured during an earlier raid, and sworn to repay mercy with service. The ship anchored in a bay so crystalline, it mirrored clouds like shattered glass. Crags loomed overhead, striped by veins of milky quartz. They climbed goat trails littered with shale. Hours passed with nothing but seabird shrieks. Then, on a windswept plateau, they saw it. A dragonet no larger than a destrier, scales sapphire dark enough to swallow light, wings frayed where brambles had torn them. It lay curled amid gorse, breaths shallow as if the world weighed too much. Icicles rimmed its nostrils despite summer sun. Maester Arn whispered, cold-blooded yet freezing. Dragons were never meant for this climb. His fingers trembled around a leather flask of warmed goat's milk. They approached slowly. Lyra's spear lay across her back. She unstrapped it, but kept blade sheathed. Drawing nearer, she saw the dragonet's eyes, luminous, but clouded by frost. It tried to hiss, but only coughed a puff of cold steam. Lyra knelt, heart thundering. She remembered Darren's words, Dragons choose riders. She unbuckled her fur cloak and draped it over the dragon's back, ignoring Kelvin's startled curse. The creature shivered, then stilled. She pressed her palm to its chilled snout. Heat pulsed, faint, like ember under ash. In Old Tongue, Nyra murmured prayer to snow spirits. Liara breathed, letting fear drain with each exhale. "Come," she whispered. "Warmth waits." The dragon blinked. One wing unfurled, shaking frost from ragged membrane. It nudged her shoulder, testing. She met its gaze. Within, flecks of ice fractals swirled under bottomless blue. "I am Liara, daughter of Karstark," she said, words fogging. "Not your master, your pack." She withdrew her hand, leaving choice. Moments stretched. The dragon pushed upright, limbs quivering. It shuffled closer, lowered its head until horns brushed her boots. Submission. Wind caught its wings. A flurry of frozen petals whirled. Maester Arn gasped softly. Liara laid her hand once more upon the sapphire brow. The chill receded beneath her palm. Kelvin exhaled. "By the drowned god's arse." Nyra smiled, teeth wolf-bright. Liara only felt the dragon's pulse thudding with hers. "Sapphire," she murmured, naming it for dream and scale alike. "Rise." They camped 2 days on the plateau, feeding sapphire, charred goat meat, and near boiling waters steeped with pine needles. Each hour the dragon grew stronger, wings testing short glides across scree, azure scales brightening from coal to lapis. At dawn on the 3rd day, Liara mounted. No saddle, only braided rope across shoulders. Sapphire launched, wind keening around them as they arced toward pale sun. The island fell away. Crags turned to pebbles, sea to sky. Riding felt unlike horse or ship. It felt like running with a storm. They banked over the wave cleaver, nearly capsizing her with downdraft. Kelvin whooped below. Maester Arn crossed himself thrice. Liara laughed, a sound rare since girlhood, and urged Sapphire north, chasing the horizon where the wall lay dreaming. When Sapphire's shadow passed Castle Black, the watchmen dropped torches in shock. Viridian bellowed greeting from the west parapet. The younger dragon answered with a ringing trill song like icicles shattering. Daron, conferring with rangers over new patrol routes, felt the chorus vibrate in marrow. He sprinted onto the yard just as Sapphire alighted, claws skidding across ice. Liara slid from its back, boots crunching. Her cheeks burned crimson from sky cold, hair windswept into wild halo. Daron stared, halfway between awe and relief. "You called," she said simply. Sapphire extended a wing toward Viridian, acknowledgement of elder yet unbowed. Viridian dipped horned head in solemn welcome. Steam curled where their breaths met. That evening, under the vaulted gloom of the armory hall, they spoke. Bronze braziers hissed, battling the unnatural chill that even so near summer crept from beyond. "2 dragons can scour a breach," Daron said. "But if the dead spill in numbers—" "Walls require gates," Liara replied, "and gates require guardians." She produced a folded cloth. The child's charcoal sketch now amended. 2 dragons intertwined, 1 green, 1 sapphire. Encircling a direwolf and 3-headed dragon joined at the heart. "Dream grows." He traced the lines, fingers grazing hers. "Dream becomes pledge," he said softly. Within days, the wall buzzed like a hive. Rangers bearing dragonglass-tipped arrows drilled on the ranges while blacksmiths forged new spearheads from obsidian unearthed beneath dragonstone. Aelith's corsairs delivered the shards in crates gilded with her sigil, fulfilling her promise of sea lanes. Wildling elders, allowed south under flag of truce, gathered beside long barrow fire pits, watching dragons wheel overhead with faces equal parts reverence and terror. They spoke of star children and ice demons older than Age of Heroes. From Bravos arrived emissaries bearing casks of oil distillate, alchemists' new craft, burning hotter than pitch yet stable as lampseed. A gesture of continued partnership, the envoy declared, brow slick with northern frost. Tycho's perfumed parchment, enclosed, read, "Fire against cold prophets all." Perhaps greed could mimic virtue long enough to matter. On a wind-ragged night beneath aurora flickers, Lyra and Daron stood atop the wall's icy rampart, watching torches weave far below like fireflies. Their cloaks snapped in the gale. Sapphire perched beside Viridian on a hanging scaffold, reinforced with oak and bronze. The dragon's tails entwined, scales glittering like fallen galaxies. "Winter outruns roads," Liara said. "Snow already drifts on Queen's Crown. Spring must outrun death," Daron answered. He inhaled, the air knifing lungs. "We need a covenant stronger than tariffs." She turned, hood shadowing high cheekbones. "What covenant?" Her voice surprisingly steady. "Marriage," he said, feeling the word brand the cold. "Wolf and dragon bound not by spite or conquest, but choice. Realm would see union and believe peace possible." "Men? Enima." Silence but for wind tugging hair across her lips. When she spoke, the words came slow, weighed. "Marriage forged in threat rings hollow. I offer no cage." He held her gaze. His eyes, she thought, looked like dusk over then glaciers, violet bruised by sleepless storms, yet still holding light. "You rode sky alone and carved fate from legend. I ask partnership. Equal riders, equal crowns, if crowns we ever wear." She looked to Sapphire nuzzling Viridian's neck. "Steam pluming. Dragons choose," she murmured half to herself. Then louder, "Let prophecy decide. If Sapphire and Viridian fly together into the heart of this storm and return alive, I'll take your hand before gods and men. If they fall, vows mean ashes." He nodded once. Agreement struck. Autumn's first full moon rose saffron behind the frostfangs. Scouts reported whites massing in gulches northeast of Hardhome, thousands by torch count, with gaunt giants herding them like sheep. Under light of that harvest moon, Daron and Liara ascended dragonback, armor interlaced with scaled steel plates, hammered thin by Winterfell's forges, lightweight, resisting bite of frost and blade. Below, watchmen saluted with obsidian-tipped lances. Maester Arn pronounced a final blessing in the old tongue, echoed by Nyra's whispered prayer to snow spirits. Then wings thundered, and two dragons climbed into star-shattered dark. They crossed the haunted forest in hours, trailing comets of green and blue. Below spread an ocean of black shapes, moving with eerie coordination. As dawn bled gray, first chill of true winter rode the wind. Unnatural, deeper than mere latitude. Viridian roared, breath searing a path of wildfire along the treetops, igniting dead pines into crimson torches. Sapphire answered, with a sonic scream that shattered frost off branches, in a sweeping arc. The horde halted, faceless heads swiveling up. From their place above fury, Daron and Liara saw the commanders, figures bone-white, crowned with icicle antlers, swords of pale crystal glowing faint azure. There were more than rumored, 8, 9? Perhaps 10. At their center towered one broader shouldered than the rest, crown twisting like frozen thorns. Its gaze lifted and met theirs across half a league, blue eyes blazing with unnatural bright. "Aim for the center," Daron called over the wind. Liara guided Sapphire into a dive, wings slicing air. The horde raised shields of ice-rimmed wood, some wielding weapons stolen from Night's Watch dead. Daron spurred Viridian downward straight at the crowned leader. At 200 feet he signaled flame. A cone of jade-blue fire lanced earth, carving a furrow through ranks of whites. Screams, human once, now cracked like brittle twigs. Sapphire banked opposite, exhaling frigid blast that crystallized moisture midair. Then warming exhale ignited the ice shards into ferocious shrapnel. But the others, for so they must be, were cunning. 3 leapt forward. Spears of pale glass arcing. One grazed Viridian's wing, slicing membrane clean as silk. The dragon bellowed, banking. Another spear whistled past Liara's leg. The cold radiating from its wake numbed her calf through greaves. They climbed, banking around a ridge. Below, the horde advanced again, unfazed by loss. "Spears aim for dragons," Liara shouted. We break them first. No, Daron replied. Break the king. They regrouped above a broken tower jutting from cliff shelf. Viridian's torn wing bled motes of ember. Sapphire licked the wound with a soft hiss, leaving a rim of frost that staunched flame blood. Daron met Liara's eyes across the gap between saddles. One charge. You take the flank, I the crown. She nodded. They dove together. At the last instant, Viridian pulled up, hurling Daron free. He leapt, sword of castle forged, Valyrian steel drawn, falling through thin air toward the Night King. Frost crystals haloed the ancient warrior's crown. Its sword swung upward with impossible grace. Metal met crystal. Sparks hissed ice. Daron rolled to his feet amid swirling snow, heat of dragonfire fading fast. The creature's strikes came silent, each blow numbing his bones. He blocked, parried, seeking mortal flesh but finding only chill. Above, Sapphire strafed the right flank, icy wings knocking whites into chasms, while flame breath vaporized undead giants. Liara loosed dragonglass arrows until quiver emptied, each shaft bursting whites into showers of frost. But for every fallen, 3 more crawled from drifts. She saw Daron's solitary duel, tiny against white wastes, and felt heart seize. Viridian circled, unable to flame without catching Prince in blast. The Night King pressed, sword weaving argent arcs. A glancing cut ripped Daron's gorget, chill burning along skin. Desperate, he dropped to a knee, thrust blade into snow, and prayed to every god. Old, new, many-faced. In answer, a piercing shriek split sky. Sapphire stooped. Liara leaned low, hand gripping harness. She drew obsidian dagger from boot, and, as Sapphire skimmed the ground, leapt, much like Daron had from Viridian, landing behind the Night King. She drove dagger into the small of its back. For a breath, nothing moved. Then cracks spiderwebbed across the other's torso, blue fire leaking. It arced backward in voiceless rage. Daron seized moment, hewing down with Valyrian steel. Blade met ice flesh, cleaving clean through. The Night King shattered, shards evaporating into glitter that wind hurled south. All along the ridge, lesser others shrieked, whites staggered, limbs jerking. A second pulse rippled outward. Bodies collapsed, lifeless once more, ice swords clattering. Silence rolled over frozen battlefield, breached only by the dragon's landing thunder. Daron sagged against Viridian's foreleg. Liara knelt in snow, dagger black and steaming in hand. Their eyes met across field of vanquished dead. She rose unsteadily, crossing to him. Snowflakes melted on her hair where dragon warmth radiated. He clasped her wrist, transferred the obsidian blade into his scabbard. Prophecy, he murmured, breath white. Chose partnership. She smiled. Small, raw, but real. Dream sealed. News traveled south like wildfire. Night King slain by twin dragon riders, horde shattered to rime dust. At White Harbor bells tolled until ropes frayed. In Bravos, the Iron Bank closed for a day. Some said to audit risk, others to toast profit. Aelith Stormborn, aboard flagship moored at stepstones, knelt before her sailors and recited northern prayers she'd learned from Nera. Then ordered hold filled with grain for Castle Black. At Summerhall, Queen Dowager Rhaella wept relief. She sent ravens bearing silks embroidered with twin dragons entwined, to drape the new godswood at Castle Black as thanks. Even old Lord Tywin Lannister, half crippled by gout and pride, wrote a grudging compliment. Fire and ice confound expectation. Maintain advantage. Daron and Liara returned to King's Landing in midwinter. Snowflakes swirling over Blackwater for the first time in living memory. They landed atop the dragon pit's cracked dome, which masons had begun restoring under Aelith's supervision. Crowds below erupted, an avalanche of cheers, laughter, some tears. Viridian and Sapphire roared twin notes that shook ravens from every rook. In the throne room, before assembled lords and small folk alike, Daron presented the shattered crown of ice he'd retrieved from the battlefield. Enemies melt, he said. "When realm stands united." Rickon Stark, broad shoulders clad in white wolf pelt, stepped forward. He laid his sword at his daughter's feet, symbolic passing of house honor. The North pledges heart and steel. He grasped Daeron's forearms, then turned to the throng. "Witness covenant." Aelith advanced next, bearing twin circlets hammered from jade and pale steel scavenged from the frozen king's fragments. "Old Valyria forged swords from flame," she intoned. "Let new realms forge crowns from fire's foil, ice itself." She set the heavier circlet upon Daeron's dark hair, the lighter upon Liara's brow. In that moment, the torches dimmed, as though paying homage. The only true light came from Dragon's breath flaring high in the pit behind. Daeron took Liara's hand in full sight of realm. "Together," he said, voice steady, "we rule no kingdom but the people's hope. Wolf and dragon stand watch while roads knit coast to coast, and peace patrols every gate. Together," she echoed, grip strong as ironwood. The crowd thundered. Hightowers rang silver bells, Dornishmen flung orange blossoms, and black brothers beat spear hafts against shields. Somewhere in the gallery, Maester Arn wept openly. Quill forgotten. That evening, summoned by Horn, the riderless crimson dragon from Dragonstone winged into the pit. It bowed headfirst to Viridian, then to Sapphire, finally kneeling before the newly crowned couple. Gasps rippled. Some named Miracle. Others foresaw fleet of dragons rising anew. Daeron leaned close to Liara. "Three heads," he whispered, recalling prophecy of old, yet only two riders. She glanced to Aelith, who watched from mezzanine, eyes gleaming with unshed ambition and newfound humility. Liara nodded slightly. Aelith descended stair, approached the crimson beast. It regarded her long heartbeats before lowering its neck. The Corsair Queen mounted, hair whipping an ember gust. At last 3 dragons lifted as one, wheeling over King's Landing in spiral that traced infinity's symbol, across star-scattered dark. Below, city lights flickered like constellations returned to Earth. Roads of hope glowing, bridges promised, debts balanced not by swords but shared burden. Winter would come again, storms would rise, but for that night, realm breathed as one body, stitched by fire and frost, and the dare of impossible dreams. High above, Daeron guided Viridian into formation with Sapphire, and the crimson new bonded. Wind roared in ears, but inside his chest a quieter sound thrummed. The steady majesty of balance, neither seized by blade nor bartered by coin, but held in outstretched hands. 2, then 3, and tomorrow perhaps 1,000, lifting the world toward dawn unimagined. Winter's hush never truly settled on King's Landing after the triple flight. Nights were alive with dragons' silhouettes wheeling through starlight, their wing beats shivering slate roofs and rattling shutters in dockside. Small folk, who once shrank from torchlit alleys at dusk, now lingered to watch Viridian, Sapphire, and the newly named Carmine flare across the sky like living constellations. The city's heart beat beneath them, hammers ringing from rebuilt forges, barges unloading fish and grain along wharves swept clean of guild corruption by Aelith's corsairs, and scholars in the Red Keep's refurbished library copying laws that would bind 7 fractious kingdoms into a single code. Daeron and Liara seldom slept more than a few hours. By dawn both walked parapets, reviewing watch rotations, or sat at a narrow cedar writing table in the solar that overlooked the Blackwater, drafting decrees to tax caravan loads by weight, not origin, and to require every holdfast along the new King's Road to keep a hearth lit for travelers in snow. Their fingers brushed often over parchment edges, an unconscious tether they forgot to hide. Whenever ravens brought word from Winterfell or Dorne, they opened the messages side by side, as if half afraid to face tidings alone, lest old fault lines sneak back into the bones of peace. The first blow struck in the Reach. At sunset on the 5th day of Frostfall, a Tyrell wine galley ran aground near Maidenpool, its deck slick with blood and the crew's lips blue as sky. Witnesses spoke of silver-winged shadows attacking from broken clouds, felling masts and dragging sailors over the rail into fog. The few survivors raved about talons the color of moonlight, and riders draped in robes stitched from funeral shrouds. Daron read the report and felt memory ripple. Dragons that had gone wild near Driftmark numbered 3, yet only Carmine had chosen a rider. 2 remained unclaimed, both grown, both unpredictable. One green, one pewter gray. He closed his eyes and saw a 7th shape, unseen but felt, brooding somewhere east of the stepstones, prophecy's empty placeholder. A conclave met in the small council chamber, no longer hung with banners of conquest, but with simple tapestries showing roads and bridges. Rickon had ridden south again, as promised, to serve as hand until the first spring thaw. Aelith represented the fleets in the free cities. Her once crimson armor re-enameled the purple-black of midnight seas. Lady Brienne of Tarth, newly confirmed master-at-arms, stood sentinel at the door, greatsword leaning on mailed shoulder. And Tycho Ilarion took a seat by invitation. The bank's coin could no longer be allowed to wander unchecked. Daron spoke first. Wild dragons did not bleed white sails in ages past unless goaded. Someone hunts chaos. He turned to Aelith. How many ships sail under banners you once knew in Essos? Dozens, she answered. But none dare challenge 3 bonded beasts. Whoever attacked your galley wants shadows blamed, not brazen flags. Then, Liara unrolled a wolf-head map, its ink still damp. Witness accounts place the assault northeast by east, exactly the corridor smugglers used before we sealed Blackwater customs. If this is sabotage, they test our nerves and trade in one stroke. Her voice was steady, but Daron felt a pulse beneath each measured word. Wolves did not panic. They calculated. Tycho steepled, jeweled fingers. Disruption lowers share prices. The Iron Bank can dispatch escorts, 20 cogs with scorpions, paid from your credit line naturally. Rickon snorted. Escort coin can wait. We send dragons. Let the realm see skyborn justice cleansing salt spray. Not dragons, Brienne murmured. Dragons burn ships. Crews drown. We need proof before retaliation. Silence threaded the chamber. At last, Daron nodded. Evidence, then flame, if warranted. Carmine flies swiftest. Aelith will lead reconnaissance. Brienne chooses 4 knights to ride the cogs. Tycho, you release funds for coastal lantern beacons every 10 leagues. When saboteurs strike again, the coast will shine like daylight. He paused. And Tycho, no usury. Charge what you would charge Bravos itself. The magistrate bowed, lips thin. After council dismissed, he lingered behind, parchment slipping from velvet sleeves. Your Grace, he said in low breath. Bravosi sailors whisper of a guild called the Veiled Ledger. Investors displeased by rising tariffs. They hire shadows, not armies. Shadows eat risk. If you starve them of secrecy, they will lash out fiercely once, then vanish. Be ready when they strike. Then, Daron's mind flashed to faceless coins and cradle daggers. I do not fear shadows that bear debts. He met Tycho's pale eyes. Debts can be bought. Tycho managed a ghost smile. Only if coin outshines vengeance. Alone at last in the solar, Daron told Liara of the Veiled Ledger. She listened, curling hair behind ear. They choose places we cannot patrol easily, she said. We choose a place they must strike. She traced fingertip across the wine-dark bay. Dragonstone, its harbor staff still thin. Ships anchored for repairs, laden with ivory and pepper from Jardine's new route. A tempting ledger entry. Oh, you plan a snare, he murmured. Bait bright enough to blind. She stood, cloak settling around shoulders like wolf's wings. And I ride sapphire above the clouds, unseen, until nets drop. They set the trap within a fortnight. Dragonstone's harbor bustled with feigned disarray, ropes untended, casks stacked carelessly, workers paid to appear half-drunk. Beneath the slovenly stage, Brienne's chosen knights crouched behind false crates, crossbows loaded with barbed bolts coated in basilisk blood. Aelith kept Carmine swirling far north, her crimson-black scales melting into nightfall like ember ghosts. Daeron remained in the Red Keep, though every sinew strained toward sky. Viridian chafed against roost chains. The attack came in thick fog after moonset. Pale shapes slid from the mist, 3 slender ships without heraldry, their hulls painted the ghost gray of breaking dawn. Tall scorpions pivoted from their decks, bolts tipped not with steel but dragonglass, stolen perhaps from caches meant for the wall. A hush covered the harbor, broken only by gull cries. Then lines whistled across decks, grapnels biting beam. Silent figures in white hoods swarmed the quays, blades of translucent stone glimmering coldly. One stabbed a dockhand, the corpse froze solid where it fell. On a bluff above, a hooded watcher lit the first of the beacon lanterns. Fire leapt along braided pitch rope, each tower igniting the next until the whole crescent of coast blazed amber. From above, Sapphire dropped like a star. Laera's war cry split fog. Sapphire's frostfire breath sheared the forward mast of the first ghost ship before it could loose a single shot. The sails exploded into shards of brittle glass. Men screamed, a sound muffled by sudden sleet that encased them mid-motion. Brienne's knights surged from hiding, crossbows thumping. Dock timbers rang with icy shards and blade strikes. Carmine roared in from the north, exhaling scarlet flame in a tight cone that seared scorpion arms clean of sinew, but left hulls smoldering, not blazing. Aelith guided the dragon's fury with surgical restraint, every gout of fire cauterizing without raising the harbor. The remaining raiders broke into a panicked rout, but Sapphire's wings blocked retreat. One ship tried to ram through driftwood breakwater. Carmine's tail smashed deckhouse, spinning the vessel until it grounded against jagged rocks. By dawn, the fog burned off to reveal ice-coated ships, raffled with damaged sails. Survivors, less than 40, knelt in chains patrolled by King's Guard. On each intruder's forearm a tattoo showed a ledger book half-veiled with a hood, proof of Tycho's whispered cabal. Daeron arrived at midday astride Viridian and walked the prisoner rows with Liara. Many refused speech, others spat Essosi curses. Only one, a scarred woman whose left ear had been half bitten away, asked for ink and parchment. She wrote in crabbed Bravosi glyphs, balances measured in blood, not coin. When Daeron pressed, she named the paymaster. One Maracquo the Grey, a Pentoshi gold merchant whose ledgers never matched his purses. The man, according to her, financed assassins, then sold short on kingdoms he believed would fall. When Daeron demanded why raise ships, she lifted shackled wrists. Because ships move king's ambitions, she said, accent thick as pearl wine. Break the hull. Drown the dream. Daeron felt the chill of those words long after the prisoners were marched to the stepstones, where Myrish courts, eager to curry realm favor, condemned them to labor repairing dikes in storm-season tides. He spent that night on Dragonstone's battlements, watching stars contort in the updrafts of dragon wings. Liara approached, hair a silver line in lantern glow, and slipped quiet beside him. "We cannot guard every ship," he said. "No," she agreed, "but we can guard faith. The realm saw dragons defend docks rather than torch them. That matters." He looked at her, eyes shadowed. "And when faith falters, then the wolf bites." She leaned into his shoulder until his sigh unwound. "Or the dragon burns. Together, they carve memory." Spring came abruptly, buds bursting on King's Road hedges the same week snow still drifted over Whiteknife. In gardens behind the Red Keep, quince trees flowered pink-white. Rhaella oversaw children plucking blossoms for festival garlands. She smiled more, the deep lines of widowhood softened by the laughter of a city no longer expecting doom every sunrise. Yet beyond those walls, conspiracies seeded in older seasons sprouted. The Citadel dispatched a deputation led by Archmaester Mirian, whose chain included 3 rare glass links, a sign of study in arcane toxins long outlawed in civilized courts. He prostrated himself before the twin thrones, but his words dripped cordial disdain. "We applaud unity," he said, yet worry magic unfurling unbridled. Wild dragons, winter spirits, ice that freezes veins. Is it prudence to host such forces in peacetime? He proposed the establishment of a learned regiment, maesters embedded in every dragon flight, carrying vials of soporific green vitriol to calm storms of scale and flame. Daron sensed the knife behind that velvet. Dragons answer riders' voices more clearly than scholars' cautions. He answered, "Your green vitriol has slain more ravens than stilled rage." Liara's hand brushed his as though to tether anger. She asked mildly whether Mirian had attended the Treasury's call for testimony about maesters who once misplaced ledgers detailing shipments of dragonglass from Dragonstone. Mirian paled. Rumors spread quickly after the veiled ledger's fall. But the Citadel's request found ears among lords who feared old Valyrian echoes, Tywin foremost. Weeks later, a raven arrived from Casterly Rock. If maesters could leash dragons, why not ensure steady ore shipments were never jeopardized by one beast's whim? Coin again argued to hobble wings. Daron rode back. "Leash wolves first, if you would leash dragons." Tywin's reply never came. Some said gout claimed him, others that shame burned letters before wax cooled. Truth or no, the rock grew silent. One voice remained strident. Picella Redwine, Dowager Lady of the Arbor, whose vineyards chafed under new taxes funding beacons. She sent envoys bearing casks of vintage wine laced with tears of lies, transparent, near tasteless. A cup found Brienne, who only lived by virtue of iron stomach and fast fists, hurling goblet aside as metal dissolved from within. Brienne dragged the would-be assassin to dungeons herself. Under torchlight and threat of Aelith's inquisitors, these days more bureaucrat than pirate, the assassin confessed a plot to sow dissent, blame dragons for poisoned wine, and spark rebellion across the Reach. Daron convened a public trial on Dragonstone, selecting that island honor court, because its cliffs overlook seas, Route 23, trade must cross. Each verdict there echoed across water like scripture. Picella refused summons, barricading inside the Arbor's marble palazzo. In absentia, evidence laid bare lettered orders scheduling poisonings to coincide with harvest festivals attended by the twin monarchs. The court sentence stripped Redwine ships of trading licenses for 7 years and assigned their wharves in Old Town to house wildling refugees, resettled from beyond the wall. Social censure cut deeper than swords. Within a month, Redwine bannermen pressed new alliances with Tyrells rather than follow a dowager into ruin. The threat dissolved. The message, keener than Carmine's claws, lingered. Plots that endanger unity will be met not just with flame, but excommunication from prophet. The day after verdicts, Daron found Liara in the godswood they'd coaxed into life where Maegor's old sceptry had stood. Carpets of moss muffled city din, while slender weirwoods transplanted from north-seeded saplings whispered leaves red as new blood. She watched pale flakes drift from blossoms overhead, a late shower of early petals swirling. He offered a small ivory casket carved with entwined dragons and direwolves. She lifted its lid to reveal 3 eggs, one mottled silver-gray shot with streaks of topaz, one deep forest green veined gold, one midnight speckled crimson like embers in coal. Warmth pulsed through shell. "Viridian and Carmine's first clutch," he said quietly. "We found them in a terrace hollow." Liara traced thumb along the midnight egg's whorls. "New fire," she whispered. "And new riders?" "Perhaps." He closed her fingers around the casket. "But not for war. For watch. Each hatchling will bond with a ward selected from every region. Reach, Vale, Dorne, North already has sapphire. Let every child of realm feel heat of flame without the scorch of conquest." Shao. She looked up, sunlight flecking her eyes. "A weaving of wings." "A covenant," he said. "And prophecy's true shape. No longer swords, but ties stronger." They sealed plan in bronze and wax, dispatching ravens to every lord. Some balked. Baratheon thundered no vassal of Storm's End would risk children among beasts. But letters returned with volunteers. A stonemason's daughter from Gulltown recommended by Lady Royce, a fisher boy from Sunspear praised by Prince Kyle for courage diving into storm swells. a healer's apprentice from High Garden whose treatise on dragon ailments had impressed archmaesters despite her peasant birth. These three arrived midsummer for the choosing. The dragon pit stood rebuilt now, arches reinforced, dome half-glass to let sunlight bathe the sand floor. Viridian and Carmine coiled on raised platforms, while Sapphire perched overhead near the jagged edge where Maegor's cruelty had once cracked. The eggs lay nested in velvet, where Daron smeared drop of his blood. Lyara hers. One by one the children approached. The fisher boy knelt by the forest green egg. It rocked, split, and a hatchling no bigger than a hunting hound spilled onto basalt. Eyes gold as sunrise. It scrabbled toward him, keening. The dome erupted with cheers under swirling doves, set free by Septus. The healer's apprentice stepped next. She hesitated, her palms stained with ink and antiseptic, then placed both surfaces flat on the mottled silver shell. A hairline fissure widened into shimmering crack, revealing wings so delicate they seemed forged from frost. The hatchling chirruped softly. She laughed, tears bright, and cradled it as if it were simply an orphaned lamb. Noble stared. A low-born girl bearing dragon was prophecy none had wagered. The Gulltown stonemason's daughter faced the midnight egg last. Minutes stretched. The shell remained cool. Some lords murmured. Daron's chest tightened. Lyra's eyes narrowed. But the child closed her eyes and began humming a tune older than any maester's ledger, a lullaby of the moon maid, sung by fisher folk across the vale. The egg quivered. A crack spidered in starburst pattern. Embers glowed within. When it burst, a hatchling coal-black save for streaks of molten red squawked and promptly head-butted her shin. She yelped, then giggled, and bowed low until the creature clambered up her arms, settling across shoulders like living scarf. The crowd's cheer cracked beams. 3 hatchlings, 3 realms, 3 fates intertwined. That night, Daron wrote in his journal, an account no scribe would ever copy. The realm's soul now flutters on fledgling wings. He fell asleep with quill in hand, warm breeze carrying scent of citron from the reach, pine from the north, salt from the narrow sea. In dream he saw roads gleaming silver across map, dragons soaring above caravans, and children laughing in tower shadows once haunted by fear. Yet even dreams could not silence whispers crawling from the crypts of past. Deep beneath the citadel, Archmaester Marion met in vaulted chamber with 6 others, each wearing half-finished chains. Candles guttered in glass mouths, their smoke curling like restrained serpents. Upon a stone plinth lay a skull, small, elongated, its teeth needle-fine. "Valyrian," Mirian said, voice tremulous with awe and terror. "We found it housed in lead to mask its resonance. The old order suppressed these bones for centuries." Another maester, eyes sunken from sleepless study, tapped parchment where calculations arced like spiderweb. "Bone retains echo of fire," he whispered. "With correct salts, we could fabricate scourge unseen since the doom." Mirian closed leather-bound journal, etched with 3-headed dragon cracking. "The realm rushes to embrace flame, but flame consumes libraries. If dragons govern roads, knowledge kneels. We remove dragon and wolf alike." His hand hovered over a vial holding ash-gray dust. "And watch rational order ascend." The others nodded, chains clinking in dim. Outside, bells of Old Town told midnight, but inside stone cloisters, older midnight awoke. Lyara felt premonition needle her skin as she and Daron rode atop Viridian toward Old Town weeks later, to accept final loan repayment ceremony at the Starry Sept and bless new canal locks. She sensed Sapphire fidget above, wings slicing thermals with unease. Carmine escorted Aelith's flagship along the coast. Clouds bruised horizon a foreboding violet. As the city's high tower thrust into view, a raven shot from arrow slit, then another, wings ragged. They circled erratic before collapsing mid-air, feathers singed by unseen heat. Daron cursed, steering Viridian higher. Below, the harbor churned with smoke. Flames spat from warehouse roofs, though no torch had struck. Sailcloth burst into cinder flecks. A piercing wail rose, not of man, but alchemy. Mirian's gray bone powder had met saltwater breeze. Its reaction birthed invisible tongues that turned breathing air to kiln blasts. Dockhand staggered, coughing blood.